All right, we're gonna call the meeting to order. I mean, I know we might be a minute or two early, but we do have a number of people with power out under these weather conditions. Go ahead and get started. First item on the agenda, Secretary's report. Anthony?
Mr. Chair, I reviewed the regular meeting minutes of January 18th, and I make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Motion made and second to approve the minutes of January 18th. Questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, Ms. Ogier.
Yes, so in your packet, you received the January 31st, 2018 Treasurer's Report. At the end of the month, we had $7,151,922.02 and $6,329,734.80 were in local funds, and $802,187.22 were in project funds. During the month, we did receive the remainder of our assessments that were due well, we've received all of our assessments at this point, but we received a good portion of our assessments before the end of January. They were due February 1st. We also received our Chapter 71, as the committee may recall. That was received twice a year in two allocations, once in January, once in June. And our student activity funds activity is still remaining high. We had two payroll, two AP warrants, and that is why our balance at the end of January is significantly higher as a result of the assessments and the transportation income. The February 28th report was not available as of this date because we're still awaiting two of our bank statements. So that should be available at the next meeting. Bank statements come in up until the 10th of the month, so we should be getting those shortly. Any questions?
Make the motion to accept.
Second.
Motion made and second to accept the Treasurer's report. Questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
And Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to report that the district has complied with the SEC requirements and all the documentation required to complete our disclosure, continuing disclosure, which is the disclosure that's due to the SEC as a result of our borrowing, has been filed and received, and we received a confirmation that it's well within the requirements.
Great. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, July 4th, Mr. Didio.
Thank you.
Didio.
Good to see you all. I'm here today again to request permission to use the facilities for the Upton Fireworks Festival. The date is June 23rd this year. Time is 4 to 11, 4 to 10, whenever the fireworks are completed. Typically they go off around 9:15, right at dusk. No changes as of yet this year, same format. I wanted to just mention that last year we were able to get a donation from the town to allow us to upgrade our sound system, to rent a professional sound system, because if we have lost kids or anything like that, it was difficult for people to hear using the band's equipment. Turned out to be a blessing. It was fantastic. You can hear us over the crowd. It allows us to make announcements, like if the fire department needs, we have a severe weather event come in, we can make announcements. People can actually hear us, if they need to return to their vehicles. So that was a really big win for us. I've already been to the town and got that approval for again this year. So that's a good thing. But other than that, no major changes as of yet. If there are any, of course, I'll coordinate that with Jim.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and second. Anthony?
I don't see Mr. Brochu here, but over the past couple of years, any particular issues or anything involving the events for the July 4th celebration that have come up? Or?
No.
I haven't heard any of those.
It's been a highly professional partnership, and to their credit, they're obsessed with leaving the field and everything else in better condition than found it,
Okay.
which in our case is not that easy.
Okay.
Delighted to work with you.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, I mean, I know traditionally this is something that can just be run through facilities, but we do appreciate that you come for the support. And we'll take the vote. All those in favor of continuing support for the Upton Men's Club, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. You have our support yet again.
One consideration, our facility manager is not feeling well at the
Okay.
moment, okay? And so we'll just gauge the seriousness of his health.
Yep.
Okay, so it's conceivable we may end up working with others with the district.
That's fine.
Okay, and because we want to make sure he's 100%. And so just be on alert, and we'll be glad to do that.
Okay, is there any particular contact information?
I think the principal's the best choice right now.
You can call me,
Okay.
Brad.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll work through that.
Great.
Thank you, Brad.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you.
Good night.
Have a good night. Next item on the agenda, student recognitions. Dr. Fitzpatrick.
It's my pleasure to recognize our distinguished softball coach, who's coming as a different capacity tonight, Peter Cardoza, representing the Leo's Club. Peter, please.
Yes, so at this year's Midwinter Conference, which is hosted by the Lions of all throughout Central Mass, District 33, they pick one student to honor with a Young Ambassador Award. This year's given to Brandon Key. It's recognized for his academics, community service, and all around good guy. So happy to present Brendan Key.
I can add to the fact sheet, thank you for that. Brandon is in the class of 2020 in engineering. He is a Milford resident. Mr. Braza represents that community. He's an exceptional student, as Mr. Cardoza mentioned. He takes primarily honors courses and currently ranks first in a competitive class of 308 students. So when the power goes out, he keeps studying. So, along with his BVT Leo Club, Brandon is involved in the student council, the math team, the Skills USA, track and field, and cross country. He's also an active Boy Scout, regularly volunteers in his church, and the Lions Young Ambassador 21st Century Award recognizes students for outstanding community service, leadership, and scholastic achievement, as summarized by Mr. Cardoza. And we're honored to have Brendan be part of Valley Tech and to continue to distinguish himself in our school. Congratulations. Well done. Thank you.
Yes.
One point of interest, this would also like to thank Brandon for being a model student, but also wanted to recognize Coach Cardoza because we struggled this year to find a representative and liaison for the Lions, and Coach Cardoza, we didn't know you were an upstanding and well-known member in the organization, and stepped forward and really salvaged this year for us in Lions. But thank you, Mr. Cardoza. It's meant a lot to us, but appreciate it. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, student representative. I don't see Carney's. He's probably weather. Snowed in without power, maybe.
Speaking of people who could not be here, Mr. Broderick also alerted me in advance of the meeting that he could not be present.
Next item on the agenda, facilities subcommittee. John.
Yes, it's a two-part. I'm gonna handle part of it, and Dave's gonna handle the second part. Okay, the first part is, we had an issue with the generator a while back, and that's been fixed. You know, there's something to do with the starting and stopping, so now it'll automatically, I guess what happened was, we have three-phase here. One of the phases, one of the legs went down. The generator didn't know it went down. So now it's fixed with, if we lose one leg, two leg, or three, the generator will kick on. So we won't have that problem with the brownouts. So that part. In the spring, we're redoing the softball field, the inner part of the softball field. They're supposed to reseed it. According to the gym, they're gonna, grade it all out and reseed it and relume it. So,
The outfield, right? There's no grass in the infield on the softball
he
field?
said the infield, so I have no clue what he was talking about there.
There's no air for the
You might want to have me come over and take a look.
They'll probably fix
I'm
the
just going by,
infield and reseed the outfield.
Right.
We'll monitor that.
Yeah, maybe he's putting sand in, I don't know. He just said he was redoing the whole
The outfield
infield.
fence, is that going to be done at the same time too?
I can bring that up at our next
Yeah,
meeting.
if you could. Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, and I'm gonna turn the rest over to Dave.
All right, the Unibank football field sign is presently split up. Part of it's in P&D, where they're making the template to affix the actual beaver head to the frame itself. The rest of it's in auto body, and it's in the process of being sanded and painted, which includes the letters, the beaver head, the frame, and the Unibank sign itself, which basically the Unibank sign is done. If anybody wants to see photos of where it's at, I have them all on my phone. I had planned to develop a couple, but never got there.
No power.
No power, there we go. So once that is all complete, it's going to be back to P&D for all of the assembly, and then the installation will take place, which is going to be dependent on ground stability, because we're going to have to get a lift in order to put this up. What we're targeting right now is late April, early May to have this completed. That's it.
Oh, in the front side?
And the front sign,
Okay.
got a little bit of delay again because of the weather, but we did have somebody donate their time to and energies to actually do the brickwork, and I'm looking at him, Mr. Braza. Thank you for that offer.
That'll be, like I said, probably second week of April is when the weather, like, breaks for good.
Should break.
Will you be able to possibly use some of the students that might want to participate in helping? Whether it's just mixing mortar or learning how to lay block, or, you know.
We possibly can, I didn't really look at it that way.
Yeah, we're trying to, it's, you know, it's a learning experience for the students, and that, you know, that's the way I understood it at our meeting, that, you know,
Yeah, no, I
that
mean,
we
I
would
don't-
try
I
to,
don't-
you know, have the students learn just, you know, from it, just not have it built, you know, which I appreciate, you know, you also helping that. But it'd be nice if we could see if we could get 1 or 2 volunteers of students that could help, just to
Yeah.
have an experience. You know? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Braza.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you.
Next item on the agenda, Curtis.
Well, as Dr. Fitzpatrick mentioned earlier, we had our bid opening on the Trask property, and you've got an item 8.1A, which should be part of your package. And as we do a bid recap, just to let you know what the committee, especially if you're new, what they had voted on in the prior year on April 13th, as part of Mass General Law, Chapter 30B, the school committee had to declare the property available for sale. During that same meeting, we also referenced some exclusions that we wanted to make sure the potential owner did not partake in. And that is agriculture, especially as it dealt with livestock, as well as industrial and manufacturing storage. So we didn't want any big diesels, routinely coming down that road. And then on January the 17th, we applied for and secured a special permit for residential use, because we thought that would be helpful to the individual who was potentially making a bid on the property. We did put the property out to bid, designed some pretty expensive specifications, and we wound up with 7 bidders and 3 additional inquiries through real estate agents, as well as the Upton Open Space Committee. We only received 1 bid. We went through that in 2 different teams as required by the law for a non-price and a price component, with other forms that are required for certificate of non-collusion and things of that nature. Obviously, being the sole bidder, came in at $360,000, and all the other bid requirements were met. So we are seeking a recommendation to award the purchase of the land to DNF Afonso Builders of Milford, Mass. And
I'll make the motion.
Yep.
Second.
Motion made and second to accept the bid of DNF Afonso Builders. Questions, comments, Doc?
Yeah, as Curtis summarized, I'd like to make certain the committee is aware. We placed conditions on the bid, even the initial bidding process, which may have resulted in discouraging people from bidding, okay, because we placed limitations on use. But we did that because we value the relationship with the neighbors in a connectivity with the community of Upton. And so, as you would hope, and as we have demonstrated hopefully for 50-something years, that we are a good neighbor, okay? And, we care about those relationships, and we're able to structure something that eventually, a little longer than we'd hoped, but led to the action which is now before you. And to the best of our ability, we continue to protect the integrity and the conservation factors in the neighborhood. And so,
It might be worth pointing out too, the original bid that we put out last year was a minimum bid of $350. This year, we came in at $325, hopefully to encourage people to bid, and our bid actually topped the initial bid spec we put out at $350, so that's good. We have also, I put a call in to Mary Jane Handy at DOR to further discuss, our limitations or our parameters that we can work with in receipt of that money.
I'd like to point out to the committee that Curtis has a unique professional relationship with Handy Dandy, and Jane Handy, with the Department of Revenue, that they've known each other for years, and she's been particularly helpful in responding to any questions we've ever had.
Any other questions, comments? All right, seeing none, hearing none, all those in favor of approving the motion that's in item 8.1 for this, awarding this bid, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Abstain. I need to abstain.
And then an abstention. Mr. Braza. All right. Thank you very much.
Item 8.2 is the post-secondary manufacturing grant proposal. What I'd like to point out is you've got an item 8.3 that's got a grant listing. This is part of the Mass Skills Capital Grant. So we're kind of going to be referencing this document in reference to this particular item. And just working with Anthony and Tom and Syra and Dr. Fitzpatrick as well, trying to create a proposal for the new Mass Skills Capital Grant that will certainly give us an opportunity to receive those funds. They've got very strict specifications in there, no more than 2 programs, and you have to really show that you're serving more students or some sort of a disadvantaged group or adult populations that would be outside the normal school hours. Given the challenges I think that we faced in our manufacturing technology as it relates to kids leaving high school and entering the workforce, I think they're finding that not as many as they'd like to be coming straight into the workforce are actually doing that. More are tending towards post-secondary. So our opportunity to work closer with the employers would be to provide some post-secondary evening training that would allow them to gain the skills necessary to enter the workforce direct, and then give our students a chance to rotate through post-secondary and come back into the workforce after they've gotten that education. I'm thinking that our proposal might come in maybe in the $200,000 to $250,000 range. We can go up to $500,000, and we will maximize that in any way that we can. Does anybody have any specific questions that me, Anthony, or Doc can answer on that particular initiative? If not, we'll move right on to the grant document 8.3. So you'll notice that at this stage we're at about $1.9 million in our grants, and I think we've done an extremely good job. I feel like I could devote more of my time to that, but unfortunately there's not enough hours in the day. I'm working closely with Lorna to have my time freed up a little bit more where I can focus on chasing down grants. A lot of them are coming into me through Doc, through staff in the building. Staff has been instrumental in creating some of their own grant proposals, and then me massaging that data and submitting it. You'll notice that kind of down at the bottom, it says we've submitted 28 applications to date, and 23 have been successful. Out of that $1.9 million, 963,000 came in the form of entitlements or competitive or other state grants. The remaining 46,000, you'd say Dr. Fitzpatrick's hitting the door with some of our banking institutions, if you will, to support the vans, the student transportation. And then, of course, we had some friends through the Broderick family as well as the Rose family who were able to at least donate some additional funds towards some unrestricted purposes and one towards the therapy garden. As you recall, we applied for a grant last year under Metro West, and unfortunately it wasn't approved, but we are able to proceed with that through this donation from the Rose family. Something else to point out is Dr. Fitzpatrick was instrumental in submitting through the legislature a $4 million It's under the Mass Capital Bond for like a program facility expansion. That is still making its way through. I think they've had a committee that's been established that's got to do some reviews on that, and then they'll come forth with a recommendation. And then, of course, and this is all for next year, by the way, and then for that particular one, it would even extend beyond next year. And then the 500,000, which we just referenced, is good for FY19 as well, and that's dealing with the post-secondary evening manufacturing technology program. All right, so I think so far we're doing pretty good with our grants. We're ahead of last year's schedule at this point when you take out those big grants that are one time. So I think we're doing well. Okay.
If I count the grants which above the donations, there's 20. Is that because other grants that we've gotten are outside of 2018? Because this list says it's 2018.
You mean the total grants applied for? They're not listed on here.
No, you said that we secured 23, but there's 20 listed. So I was wondering, the 3 that aren't on here, are they because they're 2019?
Are you counting?
No, I'm not counting the donations. You said 23 grants, totaling 963.
You know what, let me just,
Okay,
I'll
yeah, I
have
just
to-
wondered, maybe
I'll
they're
just take a look
2019.
at it.
Okay.
So if I miscounted, I'm sorry on that one.
All right.
Curtis, where's the four-school partnership on with the 16,000 of overhead? Is that something you would could count?
And what is that one?
That's the one we're working with Jim Roslin and
That is
Lisa.
actually, that's in here,
Okay, just call
at the
it.
295,000.
Oh, okay. All
Right, because we're actually receiving all of
Yeah,
that
okay,
money.
fine. I just,
All right?
Yep, I didn't recognize it under that number. I get it, thank you. Okay. Thank you, Anthony, Steve.
122. You know what it is? The last 2 down at the bottom are also part of that. And what I did was, I
those
think I
are for
originally,
2019, right?
all right, so that's
Okay.
your 22. And my 23rd one, I originally had the therapeutic garden up because we had to do some work with the family to actually, I wouldn't say apply for it, but something other than just saying, give us some money. And I pulled it out, and I should have arranged the numbers down to 22.
Okay. All right.
But anyway, does anybody have any additional questions on this as it relates to our efforts?
Again, I see the categorical issue you're raising, but on the bottom, it is possible that the award would be made in FY18, but the spending wouldn't occur till FY19.
Till 2019.
So
Yeah.
there's some overlap here.
All right.
Okay.
And we are actually writing the grant down at the bottom. That is due this month for next year.
That's what I mean.
So,
Yeah.
The award could happen. We could receive notice this fiscal year of the award.
Okay.
So it depends when you want to enter it.
and then I've given you a printout of the monthly general ledger. I handed that earlier before the start of the meeting, so you can take a look at that. You'll notice that on the bottom line, there's $250,000 additional in that total amount above this year's budget, and that's because of the vote that was taken to transfer over to capital projects. So it's raised the budget by that amount, and that came out of excess and deficiency. As we're looking towards approving the budget later tonight, part of that will also be another $250 from excess and deficiency. We certified in at just over $650, so that's going to leave us just over $150,000 after tonight's vote with the budget. Okay? We don't have any line item transfers and no donation approvals for tonight's meeting.
Mr. Steele, you got a question?
That was just a point of interest, actually. The grant that Curtis is working on for the advanced manufacturing, the evening program for adults, is it's an interesting case study, if you will. In our budget hearing, and as you know, in many of our meetings here, we've talked about the creativity to create revenue and so forth. So in that example, you have a lot of effort put in place to receive a grant to create and build a program, no cost, to pay for it with grant funds, answer the needs of the workforce. So we not only have a skills gap, particularly in advanced manufacturing, so to target some adults that would feed that need, but it also represents a revenue source for the school that would offset assessments. So it's the triple win, if you will, if we're able to secure it and do it. I think we're calculating a minimal participation of 10 students twice a year, right? But north of that, we could go as high as 16 per course, and that's when you get into a profit margin that could be applied toward the school budget. So it's just an interesting, again, case study in the creativity and the effort that's put in to try to create revenues, answer the workforce. And
I think on the heels of that too, that the bottom grant that you see, the Workforce Investment Board, I was contacted on Friday by Ethan Brown, who's our Central Mass Workforce Investment Board contact, and working with Paul Linsky to identify 3 teachers who would do externships with business and industry. So we had to already identify 3 players in that market. To work with them over the summer for, I would say, a week plus whatever time it takes to integrate that into the curriculum. But they're trying to figure out, or not figure out, but they're working with the instructors to make sure they're delivering in their classrooms the skills that are needed that are happening out in industry. I know we have close relationships now with our program advisory committees, but they want to also make sure that we're marketing our programs right to our students and learning more about that with the employer, how to get our students interested and to move from high school into the workforce. We thought that dovetailed nicely with the manufacturing technology initiative that we've got going, because that's where our business and industry leaders have said that we need to focus some efforts on to make sure that we're feeding them the students into the pipeline. Okay.
Just a clarification, the manufacturing program, as summarized, should be distinguished from the nursing program. And the nursing program we run is a post-secondary high school, as encouraged by the state. And in matching that, which occurs in at least 8 other regional vocational technical systems, the nursing program is Chapter 74 certified. Okay, it meets the highest standards. The manufacturing program is not intended to be an in-district kind of arrangement of a similar nature. Okay, it's not expected to be Chapter 74. It's intended to respond to the manufacturing need of the area, but it should not be viewed as a parallelization of the nursing program. It won't have the same revenue sensitivities. Okay, if I may.
One comment, if you would. I'd like to personally compliment you. An 80+% success rate in getting any grants. I've been involved in a lot of grants in my town lately, and that is, I'm sure, the envy of many districts and many towns. You've done a great job on that, and I appreciate it very much.
Well, I think we can do better. I really do. I haven't devoted the time that I need to, but next year, that's going to be my goal, is to get more. So,
Very good.
but I think when you use that 250,000 as a 1%, this is roughly equating to about 4.5% of our operating budget. So that's pretty good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Next on the agenda, Mr. Steele.
yes, thank you. First up is school safety procedure status. I think it's fair to say that if you are involved in public education, the last few weeks have been pretty intense on the school safety front, given the events in Parkland, Florida. Just thought that it would be helpful for the committee to kind of have an update of where we stand and what we've been doing here at Valley Tech to make sure that it continues to be a safe place. We did recently put out a statement, official statement, I believe it's included in your packet, on safety measures at BVT. So you do have that at your reference, and we have made that public on our website, and some media outlets have asked for it and so forth. So be aware that you do have that to refer back to. It highlights some key aspects of safety at Valley Tech, and interestingly starts off with some of the less intuitive things that we do here to ensure safety. First, let me just add to it. We've also met with our student body to discuss and go over some of these concepts and aspects of our school that, again, can't be overlooked, and certainly stress that importance of what we do and how we do our approach to safety here. So it starts with school culture that we have for a long time, fairly distinguished in our school culture in aspects of it being a respectful place, a tolerant place, a place where other people's views are respected. As I always say, it's easy to respect somebody else's views when they are, similar to yours. It's particularly important and challenging and meaningful when you respect somebody else's views when they are not yours. We've had a very tolerant culture in that regard. A lot of respect across the curriculum efforts that we've made here. Students not only they contribute to that and exude that in their actions. We've had a lot of discussions over the past years, not just recently, with regard to looking out for one another. It's a major theme here. When you're talking about school safety, we look out for each other when we're running saws and equipment. We look out for each other in terms of wellness, and, particularly things like depression, mental health, things like that. Students will routinely speak up on behalf of their classmates. They remind one another to be kind. So it's important to be mindful of your own words, your own actions, but it's also important sometimes, I guess you could look at it this way. Peer pressure can work in both directions, right? We remind them to remind others to be kind if they see some lapses in that. We do have a fantastic student services department that's been acclaimed for its ability to help students and maintain student wellness, and that's in partnership with the school-based health center. We have 2 counselors on staff who come from Riverside, and as well as our own school psychologists and counseling team. Be aware that a lot of the referrals that they have actually come from other students that are concerned about their classmates and things like that, or a student who's encouraged to come down and seek some services and some help from their classmates. It's important that you maintain those things, not only, like I said, everybody's contributing to respect and tolerance and kindness and good manners, nice manners, things like that, but that they're also looking out and monitoring that for each other. We did address some other issues, but particularly another one, key concept here is ownership. That the students have always been empowered here. We give them tremendous voice and ownership in their school. It's been a philosophy that we have run by for quite some time. And we collectively own every aspect of the school. It's cleanliness, so if you see garbage on the floor, pick it up, throw it in the can. This is another one of those that certainly you can watch your own actions, but you can also contribute as well. It might not be your litter, but you can pick it up. I use that as an example because it's a fairly simple one, but people do remark that the school is very clean and looks like it's brand new. As you know, it's not. It's about almost 55 years old now, and the expansion is about 13 years ago, at least now. But the school looks like it's brand new, and I tell visitors, yeah, they actually, they keep it that way. They keep it nice, and they don't believe me. They think it's a line. They think it's I'm kind of stretching it a bit, and when they walk around, they talk to the kids and they meet the kids, they realize that it's actually true. I joke, I say they probably keep this place cleaner than they keep their own room at home. I think they do. Part of the philosophy behind that is it's their school. I tell them that. It's your building. And if it breaks, you're going to paint it, you're going to plumb it, you're going to fix it. So, take good care of it. And they respond to that. Ownership comes in some other forms too, and particularly with regard to safety. we'll get into the hardening of the facility, which is, door locks and metal detectors and, arm guards and the like. But we could do all of those things, but if everybody, students and staff alike, aren't doing their part to make sure the back door stays locked and not propped open, or that we, pull the gates across when we have the overhead doors open, you can lock the front door all you want. It's not going to actually make you any safer. And so ownership also takes that form as well. I remind them that there's 1,224 of them in the building. They are the eyes and ears of the school. They certainly recognize when somebody's here who doesn't belong here, or something doesn't look right, something doesn't sound right. And that runs the gamut from, again, running equipment to seeing somebody who doesn't belong here, seeing behavior that isn't acceptable here. And not just seeing it, but then doing something about it. Say something, do something. If you're not comfortable or it doesn't seem right to address it yourself, then find an adult or somebody who will, and let them know. And, that has been an interesting conversation. I can say that a lot of the times the conversation around safety kind of includes an expectation of, pointing at somebody and saying, I want to be safer, what are you going to do about it? Or make me safer. You're the school committee chair, do something. And we miss a big component of that, to realize that school safety really starts here, each and every person, each and every student, staff member. I remind them that simple things like wearing their IDs, that signifies that they belong here, is vital. Interestingly, when I was talking to them, half of them didn't have them on, and I said, I could go get it. No, that's not the point. The point is we all contribute to our safety here. And if you want BVT to be a safe place, not just feel safe or pretend it's safe, but actually be a safe place, they need to take ownership in those things and actually do it. There's some interesting reactions to that. I would say, overall, we have a very enviable school culture here, and we have a very strong concept of ownership. But I can also tell you some facts that we have dealt with more harassment in the last 6 months than, and it would be anything name calling, those types of things, particularly around protected classes. So that's race, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, things like that. And I tell them this, I think they need to know. They wouldn't see it, they wouldn't know it. But I can tell them as the principal that this is what's happening. And Mr. Urquhart and Mr. Evans have dealt with more of that in the last 6 months than Mr. Evans' 5 years here combined. You should know that. That's not looking out for each other. And we have students who are legitimately concerned that they want a safer school. So do I. Who doesn't? Who would say no to that? But to actually make it a safer school, the answer isn't just simply more door locks, more metal detectors, more arm guards, more whatever, barbed wire. And I remind them that every single school shooting event that has taken place from '92 at Columbine to Parkland, Florida, starts with somebody who feels like they are harassed, picked on, bullied, or otherwise mightily disenfranchised with their classmates in their school. Every single one of them. You would be reactionary at best with door locks and hardening the facility to say that you've already created the disgruntled person who's not well at that point. And so, there's a lot you can do before you ever even get to hardening a facility. And once again, it takes ownership. In terms of school culture, I can tell you another thing that has started to become trendy or popular. We hear it, we feel it, and that's a concept of, not snitching, right? It's not, not cool to snitch on somebody or to tell. That's an interesting one. I'm being honest with you. I'm telling you what I'm feeling, what I'm sensing here, and what we're hearing. And I'm telling you that that's off trend. That's not culturally something that we have had for quite a few years. Here's what's ironic about it is the students, as you know, you've probably heard there's several walkouts and rallies and things like that planned for the near future. How much or how little our students participate in remains to be seen. We're talking with them about that. When I ask them what they want, what are you rallying for? What are you walking out for? A lot of them struggle to tell me. In fact, no one could tell me what they actually were doing it for. At best, they can squeak out that they say they want to be heard. And they want a voice. They want to be listened to. So part of what I've been talking to them about, particularly class officers, as they are elected representatives of their class, is that, you know, ironically, you guys want to be heard. And here you have a tremendous voice, more than I could say most students have in most schools. But this whole, like, not snitching thing or not telling, I get it, I understand it's not cool, it's difficult to do. Who couldn't relate to that? I can relate to that. But we've given you a voice, and you know that if you say something, you're going to be listened to, and that the school's going to respond if you say something. That whole thing about not snitching and not speaking up and not talking is actually not just the whole concept of say something, do something. You have a voice, you're actually rejecting it. And then once again saying, fix it, Mr. Finn, or Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Superintendent, fix it. I want to be safer. And I told them I can't do that. I don't have the ability. I could, once again, put down more security guards, put down, you know, more barbed wire, harden this place up like Fort Knox. But if we're not willing to each of us do our part, to be kind to one another, eliminate bullying from our culture, speak up when something isn't right, then there's only so much that any one of us sitting here could do. And that's a fact. And I'm not going to lie to anybody. I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to pat anybody on the head and tell them they're safe. They're not. So it's a lot of work to do culturally with the school. A lot of them do get it, but the trick is to make sure all 1,200 get it. You also have to make sure that your faculty embrace it as well and are able to model it. So it's no small task. I've always said that our school culture is an enviable one, but I've followed that up quickly with saying, you know, it takes a long time to build that. And years to build that, and days to lose it. Right? It's like produce, right? It goes bad quickly, and if you don't take care of it. And it's just really interesting because I see it's not just our kids. I see it almost like socially, what's going on in our country. There's a lot of people who want to point fingers. They're confused. They don't know what the answer is. They know universally they want things to be different and they want things to be safer. They want people to do something. But I was not completely prepared to see that when you do actually come up with the answer, or you at least know some of the best antidotes for these types of things, that it wasn't as well received as I had hoped. And I think some students, to be fair, thought that I was making it their problem. No. It's our problem. Just like everything else here at the school. I always told them it's not my school, it's your school, it's our school. I have the pleasure of working here with you. And this is no different. But I think they struggle with understanding that to make this actually work, there's a pretty big ask in it. And everybody's got to dig in and do their part. Can we achieve it? Absolutely. And to finish the conversation, yes, we're doing a lot to harden the facility too. So we've upgraded all of our surveillance cameras. They are accessible by Upton PD. Meet with Upton Police every day, including great relationship with Chief Bradley. We have implemented new communication software, training our staff on that. We have revised our stay-in-place, lockdown, and evacuation protocols, continue to revise them. And they're pretty sophisticated. We've drilled them from unconventional locations. Like, what happened if we did it in the cafeteria during lunch? Can you get 2 by 2 kids out the door this way or that way? So we've done a lot of that. We don't just evacuate the building, we actually take attendance. So and that's a goal I think a lot of schools have and few achieve. I know this. So we can evacuate the building in about 3.5 minutes, which makes the fire department happy. But in about 6.5 minutes, I can tell you exactly who is accounted for and not accounted for, which is impressive. But we've had some pretty sophisticated protocols. We drill that, particularly lockdowns in the spring, and have planned accordingly to continue to do that. We've had quite a few stay-in-places. Lockdown is just a version of a stay-in-place. And we've had a lot of evacuation drills. And now we're going to start to combo them. You know, you lock down certain portions of the building while you evacuate others and so forth. But that's not a reaction to Parkland, Florida. That's an ongoing effort that we have made to, be more sophisticated with our approach. And so we're working that. Safety seminars with all grade levels, with all kids. The assistant principals go around and do it in small groups so they have a chance to interact and so forth. All these things have been ongoing. Michael and I were talking that, we've both had questions there. What are you doing since Parkland, Florida? And you ask for clarification. What do you mean? Well, aren't you doing something? I said, actually, no, nothing different. In that, the other viewpoint in that is if all of a sudden you need to do something different, I would argue you haven't been keeping up. There is no, knee-jerk reaction to what happened in Florida. What we have learned since 1992 at Columbine is you get some pearls of wisdom from these tragedies. Some new learning inevitably comes out of each and every one of them that gives you a different twist, a different insight, and things like that. In that sense, yes, we are reactive to them because we learn from them like case studies, and they're examined like case studies. In this case, in Parkland, it sounds like the police are learning a lot about their protocols, for example, and what they do and don't do. And so, yes, we will learn from it in that fashion, but no, we're not all of a sudden doing something different. What we are is doubling down on what we know works and what we know is our best antidote to those types of situations here. Right? So, if you will, that is an update on kind of where we are with school safety and school security. It's not an easy problem to tackle. I don't think it's fair to say anybody in the country has solved this one. You got a country in turmoil over it. Sometimes it feels like flat out hysteria, to be honest with you, because it's a horrible situation, and I think people at times get it's almost panic stage about it. But when things calm down and the dust settles, and you really look at things and think critically and analyze them, I have yet to hear anybody argue with me about the points that we feel are most important on school safety. Nobody has come back to me and said, I don't agree with that, or I don't believe that. I welcome it. In fact, right now, as always, we've asked all of our students and faculty if they have ideas, suggestions for how to make this a safer school, to bring them forward. Other than what we've already put out there and discussed and recognized that we need to do and do better and continue to do well, I've had 2 suggestions. So, it's not an easy one, guys, but it's a constant labor, constant effort, and everybody's effort. Yes?
Have you considered doing one in the winter because, especially in evacuation, because obviously the exterior challenges are much different in the spring when there's no snow on the ground?
Sure.
Or there's no vehicles in certain areas. Just have you considered it? I don't know.
Yes, we have considered it. We've also used our alternative locations. So for example, there are places where everybody goes when they evacuate. There are also rally points, there's alternative rally points, and we have drilled all of those. The only reason we haven't done them in the winter is because when you do them, people are going outside in their t-shirts. They don't get to go get your coat. The police, in talking with the police, they don't mind. They said, we'll get them back in quickly, let's do one. So we're gonna wind up doing one soon, even if it's not the greatest weather, or, temperature.
You can do it tomorrow.
Right. I said, we could do it right now. This was, last week. I said, we could do it any time, really.
Questions on that? No, we greatly appreciate staying ahead of the game. Instead, if we're reacting, it's too late.
I would welcome, like I have everybody else, any member of our school community, if you have thoughts or ideas or suggestions, we love to hear them. I got about a dozen parents who either phoned or emailed us and had conversations with us, and like I said, a couple of students who have given us some ideas and some thoughts. But it doesn't take a tragedy to, have this dialogue. We're always open to that, if you guys have thoughts. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, on to some other items here. Here's something uplifting for you, the College and Career Fair Report. We had this on March 1st. We had 109 total. This is both colleges and companies that came in. The breakdown on that was right around 80 colleges came to speak with our students and offer information, and 29 companies that are looking to hire. So again, it was 109 total. We brought all of our sophomores and juniors, and we bring the seniors who have not yet identified or have not yet solidified their plans for post-graduation, right? And so that's a pretty large number of students that we filed through. It's great for the colleges and the companies. They're happy to have that kind of exposure to 700 plus, 750 kids. We set it up in a manner that they have an opportunity when they flow through the competition center to see them all. So they don't have to pick and choose and have enough time to actually exhaust any conversations or get information that they would like. We've been doing this for quite a while, and it continues to get more efficient, and pretty happy with it. I think last year we had a little bit higher number, probably about 120, and we found that this was more comfortably sized for us from all fronts, from not just the space. You start using the hallway, for example, but it wasn't about the space, it was about the number of students and their ability to actually have some meaningful dialogue and things like that. Everybody who inquired, who wanted to be part of it, was brought in. It was a matter of how hard we beat the bushes to try to get a few more. We're happy with 109. Yeah. Questions on the Career and College Fair? All right. Moving on, practical nursing graduation report. We did just have January 24th. Just make sure, yes. January 24th, practical nursing had its graduation. We had 21 new practical nursing graduates enter into the workforce. Myself, Dr. Fitzpatrick, Joe Hall were present there. We were joined by Senator Moore and also Dave Meridian, our representative, and to support their constituents, their graduates. A nice event, and had the full complement of speakers and so forth. The oaths were taken and pins were pinned. We again celebrated a nice event. It's a very different kind of graduation in that you see lots of little ones running around the audience because mom or dad just was gone a lot of nights while they were getting this credential. So it's nice, nice family event. Questions on practical nursing? Okay. Let's see. Next, we have a field trip, is that right? Yes. Do you have in your packet item 9.4? It's an out-of-state VEX trip. I asked because we just qualified for it. And this is one of those where I kind of promised you guys that I would ask you a month ago, but we qualify for these things in pretty rapid succession. So this is the VEX World Championship in Louisville, Kentucky.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Motion made and second to approve this trip to Louisville. Questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, the budget report. Mr. Lavin.
Yes, I'm gonna try to go as fast as I can. Earlier at 5 o'clock, we had the public hearing report. And, it's a pretty good turnout due to the snowstorm. And Doc gave a few words like he does every year. I don't know, there's really nothing to say, because we're gonna vote on it next. But Doc, do you wanna have a few words on it, or?
I think the public hearing allowed us to have a robust conversation, provide insight and kind of a larger picture view, responded to questions that were raised by members of the committee, they conveyed appreciation for the work of the budget subcommittee, the 9 publicly posted working sessions that were all part of that, and a lot of work behind the scenes. So my message is simply a message of appreciation. Now we'll work cooperatively, my office, the business office, and each of the school committee members with our respective communities to advance the budget, which is crafted with sensitivity for what we need to do and our best way to advance it. And also, the committee has the benefit of the school council verification, which is one step in that process, which is found in item 10.2.
Move we accept the budget as presented to us tonight.
Motion made and second to adopt the budget as presented at the public hearing earlier tonight. Questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none. Actually, just because it says it was due to the school council vote, they voted in favor as it was presented. That would
Yes.
be as direct as possible. There's nothing else. All those in favor of adopting the budget, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. We adopt the FY19 budget as presented.
10.4, Finance Committee presentation.
Can I add something, please? Make
Yes,
sure you
Kurt.
take a vote on E&D.
Oh, good point. This is good, excellent recommendation. It's been suggested that we handle E&D as a separate voting process, so the record reflects that. So, let me, yes, please.
Motion to approve the 250 E&D.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. That's to approve the transfer
Yes.
And, yeah.
or the
Well,
allocation.
Yeah.
What we do is reserve it
Okay,
as
that-
an offset to the FY19 budget.
I just want to make sure the terminology is
Okay,
accurate for what we're actually doing with it so that it's
we're reserving
Applying
it.
it.
applying.
Reserving and applying.
Okay. The motion is to reserve and apply the $250,000 from E&D toward the budget.
Yes.
Correct.
So, okay, any questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none? All those in favor of reserving and applying the $250,000 from E&D, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Now we're moving on to the
10.4.
10.4,
As mentioned during the public hearing, Mr. Bartlett and I appeared before the Upton Finance Committee on the date identified, and that is the only Finance Committee meeting that's been held due to inclement weather prior to this meeting. That was as always, with the Upton FinCom, it was a professional exchange, good questions, good conversations, and a willingness to work together. So, fair enough? Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
You're all set. That concludes your report?
Yes.
Concluding the budget subcommittee report and moving on to Dr. Fitzpatrick.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the American Association of School Administrators held its national convention in Nashville, Tennessee. I had an opportunity to go to several of the greening technique, components of that. Benefit from the professional development. This is part of the, usually built into my goals relative to looking for new resources and new techniques, anything new and different that we can incorporate within what we do here. So, any questions? I have concluded my term of office on the national office, so I no longer serve on the governing board or executive board at the national level, at least not for that organization. So, item 11.2, as mentioned again during the public hearing, reached out to all 4 new town managers, and the most recent, after her 3rd week on the job, was Angie Ellison, new town administrator from Uxbridge, who came over and spent several hours here, had a partial tour, and we certainly hope it's a fruitful partnership going forward. And I've already sent her some additional information following that visit to our campus. Any questions? Seeing none, moving on. Just the MABA Outstanding Vocational Awards Banquet. We oftentimes alert the committee of upcoming dates, and so we'll do that one. Item 11.4, we received a notification of our Cynthia Collard, who's the lead teacher for cosmetology, and an individual that we're most fortunate to recruit for the inaugural, for the very first cosmetology program in the history of Valley Tech. And so she helped move this forward, and we wish her the very best. And she wrote a nice note, which you may notice, and we'll do well to replace it. So we wish her the best. Item 11.5 is the parent newsletter contained in the packet. Yeah, there's another one. Okay. There's a second notification retirement which just occurred with a science teacher who recently married, and therefore there's a change in names in our directory, but and she and her husband are relocating. So that's, again, a positive transfer. We wish the best. She was, like the cosmetology lead teacher, a good find, a person who made a difference, and we've already looking to post that vacancy. So, okay. And you have that document as well. The parent newsletter and the alumni.
Can I make one comment on that? Quick? I was especially pleased to see that both of these professionals have decided to go to the end of school to make their retirement or transfer to another position. Again, I'd like to make sure that's noted, and we appreciate that from the professional staff.
It's also appreciated by the administrative team and the continuity of construction. Okay, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. New business. Any member of the school committee have any new business to bring forward tonight? Seeing none. Other than the notification that you've already addressed, Dr. Fitzpatrick, do you have any other business?
No, not this. We continue to monitor the health of a highly regarded HVAC instructor, and continue to work in tandem with the family, we'll continue to keep you posted on that as well. Okay?
The item 13, items for the good of the committee. As always, we do have a packet available for you to review, and even some copies if you wish to take one home, or multiple copies if the case may be, Mr. Finn.
Thank you.
Item 14, next regularly scheduled school committee, April 12th. And that concludes our business on our agenda tonight. I'll entertain a motion.
Take a motion.
Second.
Motion made and second to adjourn. Questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.